A deer comes to your yard. Not occasionally, not randomly. She comes at the same time every single day or nearly every day. The timing is precise. You notice it. You start watching for her, and she appears at the time you expected, at the location you expected. This is not random. This is not accidental. The deer has established a routine. And if you have witnessed this behavior, if you have noticed a deer returning to the same yard at the same hour again and again, you might assume she is coming for something specific: food, water, shelter, some resource that is available at that location. But that is not the complete story. What is actually happening is something more complex, something that reveals something profound about what drives a wild animal's behavior when the basic survival needs have been met. The deer is not just seeking a resource. The deer is seeking something else. The deer is seeking the comfort of routine. The deer is seeking the predictability of a world that is often chaos. The deer is seeking something that looks, in fundamental ways, like what humans seek when they establish routine. The deer is seeking emotional stability through the predictability of ritual. Tonight you are going to understand what a deer that returns to the same yard at the same hour is actually seeking. Welcome back to Hidden Backyard Wildlife, the channel where we sit with the small wild lives that share our yards and try to understand what they understand about the world. If you are new here, make sure you subscribe before this video is over, because what you are about to learn is going to change the way you understand the emotional lives of wild animals. Because you will finally understand that routine is not just a behavioral convenience. Routine is a form of emotional regulation. And a deer that returns to the same yard at the same hour is not just managing resources. She is managing herself. Today we are walking through 8 things a deer is seeking when she keeps coming to the same yard at the same hour. What each of those things reveals about the psychological needs of a wild animal. What researchers have discovered about routine-seeking behavior in prey animals. And why a deer would invest the energy and risk of traveling to the same location at the same time every single day. Despite the unpredictability of the world and the dangers that unpredictability contains. Stay with me from beginning to end, because revelation number 6 is the one that explains the neurochemistry of routine seeking in animals. And revelation number 8 is the one that will break your heart, because you will finally understand that the deer that returns at the same time every day might not be coming for food at all. She might be coming because she is lonely. She might be coming because the routine is her way of managing a world that feels too chaotic to survive without some anchor of predictability. The deer is not just seeking a resource. The deer is seeking emotional stability. The first thing a deer is doing when she returns to the same yard at the same hour is establishing a rhythm, a pattern, a predictable cycle that can be relied upon. In the wild, chaos is constant. The location where food was available yesterday might be depleted today. The shelter that was safe yesterday might be occupied by danger today. The herd dynamics that existed yesterday might be completely reorganized today. Everything is constantly shifting. But if a deer finds a location where something good happens, a location where resources are available, where safety is present, where the conditions are favorable, and if the deer establishes a routine visit to that location at a specific time, the deer is creating an island of predictability in a sea of chaos. The routine is the pattern, the time is the rhythm, the location is the anchor. By returning at the same time, the deer is creating a cycle that she can depend on. The deer is saying in her own way, this time, this place, this will be reliable. This will be something I can count on. Researchers studying temporal behavior in prey animals have found that prey animals frequently establish temporal patterns for resource access, returning to the same locations at specific times of day, suggesting that temporal predictability may be a form of resource optimization and may also serve psychological functions related to anxiety reduction. The rhythm that the deer establishes is not random. The rhythm is chosen. The rhythm is deliberate. The rhythm is the deer's way of creating order in a chaotic world. Beyond the establishment of routine itself, the deer has made a specific assessment. This particular hour is when the conditions are best. This hour might be when the yard is safest. This hour might be when you are inside and not a threat. This hour might be when other animals are less likely to be present. This hour might be when the light is right for seeing approaching danger. This hour might be when food availability is highest because you have just set out water or because the plants are most actively photosynthesizing. Whatever the reason, the deer has assessed the timing and concluded, this is when to come. This assessment is not simple. The deer is evaluating multiple variables: human activity patterns, predator activity patterns, other animal activity patterns, food availability patterns, safety assessment patterns, light and visibility patterns. The deer is running a complex calculation about optimal timing, and the deer has concluded that a specific hour or a specific range of hours is when that calculation arrives at the conclusion. It is safe to come. The conditions are right. This is not a vague understanding. This is a precise understanding. The deer has learned the rhythm of the location. The deer has learned the rhythm of your life. The deer has learned the rhythm of the other animals in the area, and the deer has synchronized her own rhythm to the optimal window. Researchers studying temporal learning in animals have found that prey animals demonstrate remarkable precision in their temporal assessments, returning to locations at consistent times, showing evidence of learning the precise timing windows when resource access and safety coincide. The timing is not accident. The timing is chosen. The hour is selected. The deer has made a deliberate decision about when the conditions align in her favor. By establishing this routine, the deer is running an experiment. The experiment is simple. Is predictability itself a form of safety? In a chaotic world where danger can emerge at any moment, the establishment of a predictable pattern offers something: the potential to let down some defenses because the expected outcome is known. If the deer comes at the same time and the same thing happens every time, the deer can relax into that predictability. The deer can reduce her threat assessment energy because the expected pattern continues to be reliable. But the routine is also a test. Every time the deer comes and the expected outcome occurs, the routine is reinforced. The deer's confidence in the pattern increases. The deer's willingness to rely on the pattern deepens. And with each successful return, each time the deer comes and the conditions are exactly as they have been before, the pattern becomes more integrated into the deer's understanding of the world. The safety of predictability is being tested and validated. Researchers studying anxiety and predictability in animals have found that predictable conditions produce measurably lower stress responses than unpredictable conditions, suggesting that the establishment of predictable patterns may function as a form of anxiety management even in prey animals. The deer is asking the question, can I trust this? Can I trust that when I come at this time, this specific outcome will occur? The answer, repeated day after day, is yes. The trust deepens. The reliance deepens. The routine becomes essential. Another thing the deer is doing is avoiding competition by developing a temporal niche, a time window that is hers. If the yard has resources, food, water, safety, there might be other animals seeking the same resources. The deer could compete with them by visiting at the same time they visit, but instead, the deer has chosen a different strategy. The deer has established a time when the resource is available to her with minimal competition. Other animals might visit at different times. Other animals might have their own optimal hours, but this hour is when the deer comes. This hour is the deer's window. By developing this temporal niche, the deer reduces the energy cost of feeding. The deer reduces the stress of competition. The deer reduces the risk of conflict with other animals. The temporal niche is as important as a territorial niche. The time is a resource as much as the food is a resource. Researchers studying resource partitioning in animals have found that prey animals frequently partition space and time, using the same resources but at different times to avoid competition, suggesting that temporal niche development is a sophisticated strategy for coexistence. The deer has learned the schedule. The deer has learned when to come to minimize competition and maximize benefit. The timing is not accidental. The timing is strategic. This is one of the most sophisticated aspects of the routine. The deer has learned your schedule and has synchronized her visits with your patterns. The deer knows when you are outside. The deer knows when you are inside. The deer knows when you are most alert and when you are least alert. The deer has observed you. The deer has learned your rhythms. And the deer has scheduled her visits for the time when your presence is most favorable to her needs. If you are outside at the time when she would normally come, she might come earlier or later. The deer is adjusting her timing based on your presence. The deer is synchronizing the visit with your schedule. This synchronization is not accident. This is learning. This is observation. This is the deer adjusting her behavior based on what she has learned about your behavior. The deer understands that certain hours are safer than others based on your patterns. The deer understands that your schedule creates windows of opportunity. The deer has learned to access those windows. Researchers studying cross-species observation have found that prey animals frequently demonstrate knowledge of human activity patterns, timing their own activities to coincide with periods of human absence or reduced activity, suggesting that prey animals are actively monitoring and learning human behavioral patterns. The deer has studied you. The deer has learned from you. The deer has adjusted herself to accommodate your schedule. The synchronization is a form of communication. The deer is responding to you even though you are not consciously aware of it. This is the revelation that explains the psychological function of routine seeking in animals. And it is the moment when you understand that routine is not just behavioral convenience, but is actually chemical comfort. When a deer establishes a routine, and the routine is followed reliably, the deer's brain undergoes specific neurochemical changes. The dopamine system, the system associated with reward and motivation, begins to be activated in anticipation of the routine. The stress hormone system, the system that produces cortisol and adrenaline, begins to downregulate because the predictability reduces perceived threat. The deer's brain is literally being soothed by the routine. The routine is a chemical reality as much as it is a behavioral reality. The comfort that the deer is seeking is not metaphorical. The comfort is neurochemical. The comfort is the feeling that arises when the brain chemistry shifts from threat activation to calm anticipation. Every time the deer comes and the expected outcome occurs, the brain releases a hit of dopamine. The anticipation the deer feels as she approaches the familiar location at the familiar time is itself a reward. The routine becomes a source of positive neurochemical regulation. Without the routine, the deer's stress level would be higher. The deer's threat response would be more activated. The deer would be burning more neurochemical resources on anxiety and vigilance. With the routine, the deer's brain can relax into the predictability. The brain chemistry shifts. The comfort arrives. Researchers studying temporal conditioning and dopamine in animals have found that predictable reward timing produces dopamine release in anticipation of the expected time, with animals showing measurable changes in brain chemistry hours before the expected reward arrives, suggesting that the anticipation of routine is itself a form of neurochemical reward. The deer is not just seeking the physical resource. The deer is seeking the neurochemical shift that occurs when routine is reliable. The deer is seeking the comfort of her own brain in the state of calm anticipation. As the routine deepens and becomes more reliable, something shifts. The routine becomes more than a feeding pattern or a safety strategy. The routine becomes an anchor point in the deer's emotional landscape. Deer are social animals. Deer live in family groups or herds. Deer are designed for companionship, but a deer might find herself alone. A deer might be separated from her family. A deer might be the last survivor of a small group. A deer might be isolated. And in that isolation, the establishment of a routine, a predictable visit to a specific location at a specific time, becomes something more than a resource-seeking behavior. The routine becomes a ritual. The routine becomes a way of marking time. The routine becomes a way of asserting continuity in a world that has been disrupted. The deer that returns to the same yard at the same hour might be managing her isolation through the anchor of routine. The consistency of the routine provides structure. The predictability provides comfort. The repetition provides meaning. If the yard is visited at a specific time every day, then the deer can organize her existence around that visit. The visit becomes a landmark in time. The location becomes a landmark in space. Together, they create an anchor point that allows the isolated deer to feel less untethered. Researchers studying isolation and behavior in prey animals have found that isolated animals frequently develop repetitive behaviors and establish routine visits to specific locations, suggesting that routine may serve a psychological function related to managing the stress of isolation. The deer is not coming to the yard just for food. The deer is coming to the yard because the ritual of the return provides psychological structure. The deer is coming because the routine itself is comforting. The deer is coming because she is managing her isolation. And this is the revelation that will break your heart. The deer that returns to the same yard at the same hour might be lonely. Loneliness is often thought of as a human emotion, but loneliness is a mammalian reality. Loneliness is what a social being feels when she is separated from the companionship that she is designed to have. A deer that is isolated, separated from her family, separated from her herd, without companionship in a world designed for companionship, is experiencing something that resembles what humans experience as loneliness. And the establishment of a routine, the commitment to returning to the same place at the same time every single day, might be the deer's way of creating a relationship. The relationship is not with another deer. The relationship is with the place. The relationship is with the time. The relationship is with the rhythm. By returning every day at the same time, the deer is creating a form of connection. The connection is with consistency itself. The connection is with predictability. The connection is with the feeling that something in her life is reliable. The yard becomes a kind of companion. The time becomes a kind of partner. The routine becomes a kind of relationship. And this relationship might be the difference between a deer that can manage her isolation and a deer that is completely overwhelmed by it. The routine is how the isolated deer maintains psychological stability. The routine is how the lonely deer manages her loneliness. The routine is how the deer that should be in a herd creates some form of continuity and connection. The deer is seeking emotional stability. The deer is seeking the comfort of routine. The deer is seeking, in her own way, through the only means available to her, some form of connection. This is not a story about a deer's feeding behavior. This is a story about resilience, about how a being survives isolation, about how an animal that is meant to be social manages to survive alone, about how the establishment of routine becomes a form of emotional medicine. The deer that returns to the same yard at the same hour is not just optimizing resource access. She is managing her own emotional state. She is creating structure where chaos could overwhelm her. She is finding a way to continue living when circumstances have isolated her from the companionship she was designed to have. The routine is her way of saying, I will be here. This will continue. This will be reliable. In a world that is uncertain, at least this will happen. And if you have a deer that comes to your yard at the same time every day, you might be the closest thing she has to consistency in her life. You might be providing, through the simple establishment of routine and the safety of your location, the emotional anchor that allows her to survive. That is not a small thing. Before I go, I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer in the comments below. Do you have a deer that comes to your yard at the same time? Have you noticed the pattern? Have you realized that the timing is precise, that the routine is reliable, that the visit is coming at a time when you would almost predict it? Tell me about it. What time does she come? How long has the pattern been established? What do you think she is seeking? Have you noticed any changes in the pattern? Has the deer bonded with you or with the location? The stories this hidden backyard wildlife community shares are some of the most extraordinary I read every week. And every single one of them matters, because every single one of them is a story about a wild being finding a way to manage her existence, about a deer creating meaning through routine, about an animal transforming a location into an anchor point in her life. If anything in this video changed the way you understand the deer that visits your yard, if it changed what you will see the next time she arrives at her appointed time, share it with someone who would understand. Sometimes the right perspective at the right moment changes not just what we notice, but how we move through the world. Thank you for being here at Hidden Backyard Wildlife. The next time your deer arrives at her usual time, notice her, not just as a resource seeker, but as a being that has chosen this time, this place, this rhythm as her way of managing her existence. She has decided to make this yard a part of her life. She has decided that this time is worth coming back for. She has decided that the routine matters. And if you provide safety and consistency for her visit, you are offering her something precious. You are offering her stability in a chaotic world. I will see you in the next one.